and welcome to Expert Advice. On our show, we have been talking about architecture of buildings as well as interior designing. Something that we missed and has been neglected as a whole was cities. Cities are very much important for us living beings as well as they prove a crucial role in the development of the country. And today we'll be talking on designing of cities. And to discuss the same, I have with me Sapna Srivastav, who is the managing editor of Buildotech magazine. Before we head to our topic, let's welcome our very special guest. Welcome to the show, Sapna.
Hello, Pooja.
Hi. So, since I spoke, cities are such an important part of the country as well as, they play a major role in the development. And there is some concept known as urban design, which proves a crucial role in the city development. Now, could you tell me what is urban design actually?
Pooja, urban design is about connecting of built spaces, unbuilt spaces, movement, nature, and most importantly, the people. A lot of time people mistake urban planning as urban design, whereas when we talk about urban planning, it is about the land use, allocation of land spaces as per the users. It's about planning the city. When we are talking of urban designing, we are talking about the designing of these spaces that have been allocated. For instance, in a urban planning, we have allocated spaces for open areas, we have allocated spaces for development, we have allocated spaces for public institutions. Urban design comes in the picture as to design these open spaces. Should they be landscaped gardens? Should be the play areas? Should they be the piazzas? Which would help better the lives of the people who are using it, who are living in the city. So that is what urban design is all about. There are some basic elements in urban design, starting with streets. Most of the cities around the world, they are identified by their street patterns, whether it is European cities with their narrow cobbled streets, or for that matter, Delhi, which has circular ring roads. Street system is very important. It's an important part of urban design, how we lay out our streets, because they are the ones which connect different places. The buildings lining these streets, the architecture of these buildings, the facades of these buildings will determine the character of the city. So they are another important element of urban design. The movement of people living in the city, which includes the transportation, the means of transportation, how we are planning that forms an integral part of urban design. Landscaping, when we are talking about landscaping, it is about the open areas, the play areas, even landscaping of areas around the buildings so that they are more pleasant, they are more enjoyable, they are more, they create a visual impression. So these are all basic elements of an urban design.
Correct. So now I would like to know what are the steps or procedures involved in urban design?
Currently, what we follow for urban design is a top-down approach. When I say top-down approach, it means our government planners, our town planners or the government agencies, they decide the planning, they work out the strategies, and then it is passed on to or informed to the citizens, which is not the right way to do it.
Okay.
What happens is, in this kind of a top-down approach, there is no ownership by the citizens. Many a times, policymakers overlook what actually are the challenges at the ground faced by the citizens in their day-to-day life. They are not addressed. Because once the strategies have been formulated, there is no scope of refinement because they are already on the ground being implemented.
Exactly.
Citizens are not involved. There is no ownership. They don't feel responsible to maintain these developments. And what happens is, what we see is that over a period of time, whatever developments and open spaces, we see that they have deteriorated or they are not being maintained well. The correct approach, what professionals and the experts say, is first of all involve citizens. Citizen groups should be called in and taken suggestions. What are the challenges? What are the difficulties they face? And once you have these parameters with you, you have the involvement of the citizens, then you ideate. You come out with a concept to address these challenges. Once these ideas have been, come in picture, then you make a prototype. That prototype is then put for testing. Because in a testing phase on ground, you come to know what are some of the things where your prototype or your idea might be lacking, and then it can be refined upon, it can be improvised upon. And once these steps have been taken, then you can implement the strategy. And because the citizens have been involved right from the beginning in the urban design process, in the planning process, they feel more responsible to maintain these strategies. That is how an urban design process should be, rather than the top-down approach.
So as you mentioned, that this is the procedure that we need to go about, and we should follow the top-down approach. And I hope the decision makers out there who are listening to us should give an earful to Sapna's words. Now, moving ahead, I would like to know, what are the features of urban design?
Apart from the basic elements that I said, as the streets, the transportation, the landscaping, and our buildings, the most important feature of any urban design is how to improve the quality of life of the city dwellers, of the people who are living there. Some of the features that would impact these parameters would be the layout, the density, the mixed use, the scale and appearance, and for all these parameters, to fulfill these parameters, we need to have a master plan. Because a master plan is the vision of the city, how it is going to work today, how it's going to work tomorrow, how the infrastructure will be planned, and how the infrastructure has been planned for next coming 20 years or beyond. So as the city grows, the infrastructure has to keep pace with that. So the master plan gives the vision of what the layout would be, what the densities would be, because if the density is more, which means the number of people living in a square meter of area or a square kilometer of an area are more than what should be, it would lead to congestion, it could lead to bad living conditions. Similarly, if there is no mixed use, you have to be very judicious with the kind of use land use that you are giving to adjacent areas. If there are only business areas and then residential areas are too far, then you are creating a lot of transportation needs. So how do you judiciously mix all these land uses together is another important criteria. What is the scale and appearance of the buildings? Because that decides the visual impression of the city. It gives the identity to the city. So all these are the features of the urban design which have to be kept in consideration.
Okay, so these were the features. And I think it's very important, proper planning is actually required for a proper design to come up, and that shall promote the healthy living, the efficient living of the citizens. Right. So these were the features that we spoke about. We are going to take a very small break. Be with us. What are the, advantages or the benefits that, urban design has?
Urban design, the first and the foremost advantage of an urban design is that it gives identity to a city.
Welcome back to Expert Advice. We have with us Sapna Srivastava, who's talking on urban design. Let's take this conversation further. Now, moving further, I would like to know, what are the advantages or the benefits that urban design has?
Urban design, the first and the foremost advantage of an urban design is that it gives identity to a city. When I say it gives identity to the city is through one way of doing it is public art, in terms of our probably historical monuments, in terms of probably sculptures of historical figures. Some examples I will give is like whenever we say India Gate, the picture that comes is city of Delhi.
Exactly.
When we say Gateway of India, the picture that comes to our mind is Mumbai. Right. For that matter, Anish Kapoor's Cloud Gate is what signifies Chicago. So public art is very important when we are designing any urban space.
Okay. So you mean to say that, when we go for such modern approach like urban design, we should not forget our past, we should not forget our culture and traditions. That's why you're...
No, it is very important because, see, urban design is about, as I said, it is about improving the quality of the life of
Correct.
people. It is about creating an identity for the city. It is about visual impression of the city. It is not only about allocating spaces, giving the land use, okay, here it will be the buildings, here will be the open space. It's not about that. It is about creating a holistic place for people to live, enjoy, experience.
Yes.
When we are talking about that, public art is completely missing from
Correct.
our Indian urban cities. We need to create, the people should have sense of pride in the place they live. That comes through our public art, through our public spaces, how we design them so that people feel good about when they are in these public spaces. They enjoy being out there.
Yes.
One way is, as I said, is our historical monuments, because they make us feel proud of our city, the place we live in. Creating modern public arts, which could be, give an identity to that particular city. So while public art is an important aspect which is missing in most of our urban cities, another important aspect is the streets, how we plan our streets. When we say planning the streets, it's not only about for vehicles, for transportation, but it will also determine how pedestrian hostile or friendly the city is.
Exactly.
In terms of, we need to have more walkways, more pathways, shaded pathways, streets which have street furniture like our benches, bus shelters, the way we design our bus shelters, so that when people are waiting for their buses, they are protected from weather elements. They can be done in a very aesthetic way as well. Again, street furniture, when we are talking about, they can be, they have to be ergonomically designed, so they are comfortable to sit for people who probably are walking long distances. This encourages people to walk more to nearby distances, so that they do not use their vehicles more, which actually leads to a more environment-friendly city. Especially for women, for children, for elderly, they need some spaces in between where they can sit. So probably some seating around the trees is a good way to add some seating on the way for people who are using pathways or the footpaths. Another important aspect is street lighting, because how we design our lighting, city lighting. It's not only about giving electric poles which are at a height, but we also need some lights at the eye level, at the ground level, so that our pathways are lighted enough so that we do not fall or we do not slip, or especially elderly and children, they need light near the ground so that it's accident free. Similarly, we can have lightings planned in the landscape, in the way we light our plants, so that it gives a really good visual appearance to the city, the public areas, the streets. Then the architecture of the city, the way we are planning our buildings. We are building, right now the approach is everyone is designing their own buildings without any consideration for what the whole city or a whole street will look like, which means we do not have any cohesive look to our cities. So that's an important aspect that we have to, whenever we are designing our buildings. It is the city planning commission duty to see how they can regularize, at least on the main areas, in the main piazzas, the buildings are all synchronized in the way they look or appear. Another important aspect is how we mix our land use, how we are planning our residential areas, how we are planning our business area, how we are planning our entertainment areas. Sometimes it happens our residential areas are too far from the business hub, which means a lot of commuting for people. When our entertainment hubs are, or the social areas are not nearby the residential areas or the business areas, which means the social life of people is not so much, because people cannot travel that long. It also affects the safety of the citizens, the way we mix the land use. If consider a business area. After 6, the entire business area is vacant. All the people have left from their place of work. That becomes a safety issue for that particular area. Anyone leaving late at night would definitely feel scared.
Exactly.
If we have residential areas planned around these business hubs, or if we have social areas or entertainment zones planned around these business hubs, it will make sure that all these entertainment areas or the eating areas are open way beyond, later in the later period as well. So the activity is continuous, and
Exactly.
It keeps the city safe. All these aspects are important in urban design, and these are the advantages of an urban design, because when we are designing, we are taking care of all these aspects.
We are going to take a very small break. Be with us. How exactly do they work? Like, how do they absorb sun rays? As you said, they promote healthy living. So how exactly it's all done?
See, vertical gardens was a concept which was floated by a French designer.
Welcome back to Expert Advice. We have with us Sapna Srivastav, who's talking on urban design. Let's take this conversation further. Now, one question that arises here is, does urban design considers inclusion of green spaces in the cities itself?
Yes, definitely. Green spaces are a very important part of any urban planning, any city planning, because these are the lungs of the city, as we call it. Because what happens is when there's a lot of concretization, all our roads are paved, all our pathways are paved, all our buildings are concrete buildings, it causes heat island effect. What happens is all the sun's radiation, it reflects back from all these solid surfaces and it creates more heat in the city. If you go in a city center, you will feel more warm rather than when you are moving away from the city center, you feel okay, it's the you are feeling better. This is because of the heat island effect, because of the sun rays being radiated from all the solid surfaces. These green areas help absorb that rays, help create spaces which are more give out oxygen. They create lungs, the breathing spaces for the city. In fact, in many cities now, what they have started doing is creating vertical gardens, because if the city, in any case, all major cities, they are all space crunched. Yeah. And so how do we increase greenery in the cities, or basically in the city center? We have limited space. So now what they have started doing is taking gardens on the vertical surfaces, which means a building wall becomes a vertical garden. The whole idea is so the maximum absorption of sun's rays and maximum oxygen that you can get from these plants. We have a lot of vertical gardens here in India as well, but they are mostly being used within the buildings. You have a lot of hotels doing that more as a aesthetic feature rather than a functional feature. But this is one of the ways we can make our cities greener, and urban design is all about how we use our open spaces.
Okay, talking about these vertical gardens, I mean, how exactly do they work? Like, how do they absorb sun rays? As you said, they promote healthy living. So how exactly it's all done?
See, vertical gardens was a concept which was floated by a French designer, and it basically is planting real plants on a vertical surface. What you need is, without going into technical details, what you need is a support system, some soil for the plants, and irrigation system. For the irrigation system also, you are not using fresh water. What actually you are using is grey water. Grey water is what comes from which is not the black water. Black water is what comes from your toilets, but the grey water is or your storm water or the rain water which has flown into your drains. So this grey water, because it is rich in nutrients, what the plants need. Yes. Even the choice of plant depends on the kind of vertical surface or the irrigation system that you can support. According to that, you choose your plants, and the vertical garden is created. These vertical gardens are then they can be on the entire wall of a building, and the irrigation system, they have a dripping system behind it, which keeps giving water to these plants. And like any other garden you have, they work simply the same way. You can create beautiful creations with different kinds of plants and have a whole aesthetic appearance to the, and in fact they also help buildings to be cooler inside, because the building is not absorbing the sun's heat.
So I think vertical gardens is that one thing that all the future cities need.
We can do that definitely, because as horizontal spaces are getting scarce by the day, why not make use of our vertical spaces? Yeah,
and that way we can promote good nature, and we can harness the benefits of nature.
More aesthetically pleasing spaces. Yeah.
Cool air and everything. Okay, coming back to urban design. Now my next question is, we spoke about the advantages and benefits overall. Now, talking about the city as a whole, any city requires growth and development. So how does urban design help that?
We have many examples from around the world how cities have been planned for particularly, to help them grow economically and, develop as major business hubs. Some examples are Dubai, which has been promoted as a business city and has been planned accordingly. Cities like Singapore or Shanghai, they are being developed as business hubs. So which means the urban designers there are consciously working to give that image to the city that it is a business city where you can come and do business, you can invest and do business. On the other hand, there are cities like Las Vegas which are being promoted as entertainment hubs, which means the entire planning is accordingly where you come for recreation, you come for leisure, you come for entertainment, and the infrastructure has been designed to support these activities. Okay. Closer home, we can say Ahmedabad is being developed as a business city, and the infrastructure is being promoted that way to attract investors. When you create, first of all, as I said, you need to have a vision for a city. How do you want to see that city develop? Or what is your vision for the city to be? Once you have that master plan, then you go ahead with the planning, the designing, the infrastructure accordingly. So we can improve the slum infrastructure, give high quality, low cost housing in various formats to the residents the way they are living, because right now in slums everyone has different square footage of area. So give them diverse formats, give them high value, low cost housing, involve the slum dwellers in the development so they become the stakeholders of the development, they will help maintain it well. And we can create a vibrant infrastructure and housing for these people and make it part of the city planning, make it part of the designing of the city so that it does not stand out as a sore thumb, but it becomes the overall part of the design of the city. Some of the ways, definitely, there are other ways, there are other approaches which experts can suggest, and definitely urban designing can take us probably closer to our dream of housing for all.
I think today's conversation was one such kind, that we would be appreciated for, the entire team at Expert Advice as well as you. I mean, it was very much informative, and we really thank you from our heart, for sharing such good piece of information with us.
Always a pleasure, Pooja.
And thanks again for coming on our show.
Thank you, Pooja. It's always a pleasure.
Friends, we shall continue this conversation in the next episode. Be with us and keep watching Spin TV.